Hi, this is Angela Jordan, and I will be doing my science teaching video on properties of matter. To begin with, I will ask the students to think about materials used to make a building or structure. Some buildings are made out of cement, some buildings are made out of bricks, some buildings are made out of stucco or wood, some buildings are made out of multiple different types of materials. Now I will ask them what would happen to the materials used to make the building if the building decides to crumble. Do those materials, do the properties that make up those materials change? Do they disappear because the building is not intact anymore? Do they stay the same? So now we're going to explore what happens to properties of matter when it changes its physical state. In previous lessons, we've learned that matter can change its properties. Some matter can go from a solid to a liquid to a gas, um, and repeat that cycle as many times as it can. Some substances cannot, but we are talking about substances that do change its physical state today. So we're going to further explore um, by reading our objective. And that objective is I can explain what happens when different substances are mixed, and I can demonstrate that mixtures of solutions can be separated. And let's begin by talking about our vocabulary. So, a mixture is a substance where different materials are put together, but each keeps its own property. And a solution is a mixture where the substances are easily spread out and do not settle to the bottom of the container. And today we'll be talking about both of those. To further explore our objective, we are going to do a lab investigation. What happens to properties of matter when they change their physical state? Once again, going back to the beginning, do they change? Do they disappear? Do they turn into something else? Is there a new property that's created? Or do they stay the same? So the materials that we will need to use to explore will be baking soda, salt, sugar, water, and cups. As you can see, we have our 3 cups labeled with our materials that we will actually pour into the cups and have them and see what happens. So as you can see to the right, the materials are poured into the cups and they've pretty much dissolved. The water still remains clear. The sugar is still taking a little time to dissolve here. And this is where I would have a conversation with my students about why. And the answer that I will be looking for is that the sugar cubes or crystals are bigger than the salt cubes or crystals and the baking powder. So it would take a little more time for those sugar crystals to dissolve because they were bigger. So I would further explain that the sugar, baking soda, and salt can all dissolve in water. This does not mean that the properties have disappeared. Their physical states have changed, but not their properties. I will then create an informal assessment that requires the students to show their understanding. It will be a combination of 3 questions. The first question is some mixtures can be separated through evaporation, true or false? Substances can only be dissolved in water, is that true or false? And the last one is dissolving sugar in water produces a new substance. Is that true or false? To further elaborate, I would want to ask the students what would happen if we tried to dissolve cornstarch in water? We will see that cornstarch does not dissolve in water and it only makes the water cloudy. The properties do not change, just like the properties of the sugar, salt, and baking soda do not change. However, the cornstarch cannot dissolve, which is the difference between that substance and the other three. So, to evaluate our lab investigation, we will predict how water can be separated from the sugar, baking soda, and salt to see what happens to those properties of matter. We will also describe the properties of the sugar, baking soda, and salt after it has separated from the water. Excuse me. So after evaluation over a period of time, the students will see that the water does evaporate from the substance. So that is one way of separating the substance from the mixture. And we can see that to the left, the salt has returned to its physical state of solid. The sugar has done the same, it's around the rims of these cups, and the baking soda has also done the same. So that tells us that the properties returns to its solid state after water has evaporated. So we can now determine that matter will always keep its property. It does not matter if the physical state has changed. Thank you for listening.